The Brisbane Lions fancast wouldn't be possible without our 2024 sponsors, Hop On Brewery Tours and Crisp Communications. Hop On Brewery Tours give you the chance to learn and experience some of the best craft breweries across Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Check them out and book yourself a tour right now at hoponbrewerytours.com.au. And Abby and the team at Crisp Communications, not only are they going to get you some Brisbane Lions fancast stickers, but they can help you out if you're in business and you need a marketing push, you need help with your digital marketing, your very own podcast, whether it's stickers for your own business. They offer it all. Web design, podcast management, social media, training and coaching. It's all available at crispcoms.co. Make sure you check out Abby and the team because they will get you everything you need to get your business skyrocketing. All right, let's get into the show.
Starce was a late out because he injured himself in the warm-up here with a calf.
McCarthy's gone down.
It looks like he has hurt that right knee.
Right knee, yeah, he grabbed for it and went down very easily. This is not a good sign for Linc McCarthy.
Gets under that a little. Oh, big early leap from Walter. Fist to Ballard. And now Gardner's hurt his knee. You're right
in front of me here. Yeah, it doesn't look good.
Little knock, almost good. Here's his chance. Logan Morris. Welcome to the big time. All games are equal, but some are a little more equal than others. To win Q Clash 26 like this has been massive for the Lions.
The Brisbane Lions fancast is back after a Q Clash, after a win for the first time in a while, but it came at a serious cost. 2 knees, 1 head, 1 calf, all in a half a footy. How interesting. Let's go with that so far. We had 2 debuts last night at the Q Clash. A bit of everything, and despite the fact that there was a significant injury toll, it was a fun little game to be part of. So let's have a sit down, let's have a chat about it. Patrick, how did you see the Q Clash from your living room?
Firstly, I just want to say I seem like I'm rubbing off on you seeing the interesting side of football, even when things are objectively horrifying. So that's good to know. No, it was... I mean, it started off well, and then it went horrible, horrifying, horrible. And then it kind of was okay. And, like, you know, there were elements, I think, that a lot of people kind of probably were keen to see, but not under duress like that. So.
I was getting, like, real-time updates from you texting me, who obviously had access to commentary about what was going on with the injuries as they were unfolding. Although,
hey, don't give any credit to commentary. That was all my own shoe.
Having said that, it did look pretty obvious, especially the knees, that they were going to be ACLs, and it hasn't been confirmed at this point. But I think it is all but basically confirmed that Linc and Dizzy will be missing the rest of the year, and maybe even some of next year with those knees. Noah was the one that we didn't really know until I got the text message from you, and I sort of disseminated that information to the people around me. But once again, I'd be surprised.
He was like, he's dead.
Yeah.
It was weird. He got kneed in the back of the head, didn't move, and then was up and about. And I was like, that guy was definitely knocked out. So he is not coming back. But yeah, good.
Yeah, big time. Well, we did have some changes from the team last week. It wasn't exactly sweeping or significant changes, although it did involve having not 1 but 2 debutants in the end. Good to see Bruce Reville get a game at AFL level, who has been toiling away in the 2s for a long time. And I think I said very early on in the season that he was a very left field option for a Kitty Coleman replacement. I said it was a long way off. And he did come into the team, not exactly as a Kitty Coleman replacement, but great to see him get himself a game. Archie obviously went out, Darcy Fort went out, Tunstall got dropped, and Starcevic at the 11th hour, like the latest possible out that has ever been outed.
Well, I think it's probably more like, I know Tunstall got quote-unquote dropped, but I think it was probably more that he got taken out of the squad so he could have a full run at VFL level, I think.
Yeah, that's what Fag said, and I don't know that he had a fun time at the VFL. We'll get to that later on. Sharpie also came in. Big O also resumed his spot in the ruck, and we will talk about him as well because I thought that was one of his better games, especially against a fairly decent ruckman in Jared Witts.
And then we had Logan Morris obviously come in as the emergency sub, which, I mean, given Fagan doesn't like to debut fellas in as sub, you know, because it kind of thinks it's somewhat disingenuous. So maybe the writing was on the wall that there was going to be some sort of crisis in the first quarter, but who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. Yeah, look, it was good to see some changes in that sort of regard. Like, I think, as I said, a lot of people probably wanted quite a few of the guys that ended up playing, or, just some sort of revitalization to the team, but probably not in that way. If you're asking me, like, who's about to pick anyone coming out to put in, Sharpie or whatever, it's probably not going to be Link McCarthy. I know a lot of people will probably say Darcy Gardner was close to the chopping block for them, but I mean, you can't buy that sort of efficiency when he was on the field.
Yep.
3 kicks, 2 goals. It's pretty fantastic.
It is a strange one.
And Noah Answorth has been one of our, really good performers in some pretty horrid displays in the past few weeks. So
it was a bit of a strange one with Darcy because after last week's episode, I did solicit on Twitter for the, what changes are you going to make? And I said, I did put the caveat and make them as unhinged as you possibly can. And a lot of people did go for that route. A few people just said, drop everyone except for Zorko and Harris and see what they can do. Hipwood's name got thrown up quite a bit, as did Darcy Gardner's. And I was at the point where I was sort of done with the Gardner experiment as well, as a lot of people, as that third tall. And I guess we got it in some sort of roundabout fashion, but not before he started to show himself as a forward. So isn't that a bit of a double-edged sword?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a cynic in me that would argue, like, were those really unhinged changes, Kieran, that they're ones that we hear and have heard for, the Darcy Gardner one for 7 weeks and the Hipwood one forever. So, what is unhinged?
All in all, I thought the changes were good. It did, because the team has been so settled for so long, it really did bring an air. And that's what I meant when I said it was a fun little game. It did bring a little bit of excitement and enjoyment to see 2 new fellas running around and give people something to, root for and cheer for, especially any time they got a touch. And the Bruce, every time he gets the ball, that chant has clearly solidified itself nice and early, which, call me old-fashioned, old man yells at cloud gear. I'm not a big fan of that sort of tacky stuff, but it did add that element of fun. And then,
well, I think you can look at it and go, that's kind of an element where, like, I think the Brisbane crowd can often be, let's say, not exactly aware sometimes, like, and that was a good level of awareness of what was going on, and a guy coming in playing his first game, and then you juxtapose that with the Mexican wave happening in the fourth quarter, which is like something that I've literally never seen, having been to Gabba games from 97 through to the mid 20 teens. I remarked that I've never seen that happen before, so great. Obviously not. I fucking hate that. So,
well, that I think.
So you had the crowd knowledge of what was going on with the Bruce stuff, and then the complete.
The Mexican wave was
nature.
a bit of a strange one, and I think it was a complete byproduct of that third quarter where we kicked 0 goals 9, and the crowd's just getting sort of angsty and restless, and the game had everything. Like I said, it had that element of fun and enjoyment. It had the element of, oh my god, we're losing people left, right, and centre with injuries. Let's throw a Mexican wave in there. So it just, and it really started at the top level behind the Suns' goal. They tried to do it so many times, and it would often make it all the way around to the Lions' end goal, and then the scoreboard sort of breaks up the crowd, and it sort of stopped, and then there'd be a big boo from the crowd that started it, and then it eventually got all the way around, and then it did like 4 laps non-stop. So I can't believe we're sitting here talking about a Mexican wave at the Gabba. So hopefully that there's no need for that to happen again, because we'll be kicking straighter. And I think the crowd was just happy to see a win at home as well for the first time this year. And shout out to, the Queensland crowd, 30,000 for a Q Clash, that's great. On a Sunday night, that's great.
Yeah, I admit the bounce time was a little bit like, what the hell's going on? But I didn't know that it was Labor Day. So here we are. But yeah, I mean, where to begin? The warm-up, eh?
Yeah. Then I didn't...
Old Chrome Dome Starcevic.
Yeah, I didn't have any idea, and that's when you texted me saying Starce out, Logan Morris in. I was like, oh my god, I saw him play today in the VFL. I hope he only... Because I didn't manage to watch the whole VFL game. I watched the first quarter and a half and came back to it later and had a look at the score, and I was like, boy howdy, what's happened here? And I had hoped that Logan actually didn't play a full game, as he was, first emergency anyway, but turns out he did. And managed to play 2 basically full games of footy in a day with a bit of a Macca's stop in between. So it's just a bit of a shame that he didn't get the, the lead up that Bruce got into, celebrating the fact he was playing his first AFL game. But I'm sure at the end of the day, he doesn't really matter. He got to play his first AFL game, and luckily his parents were able to get there as well. So, all's well that ends well. But yeah, Starce are very laid out. We don't know what the diagnosis is with that calf, how long it's going to be. So it could be no weeks, it could be 1 week, it could be 4 weeks. Calves are a bit tricky.
Yeah, well, hopefully the club do something along the lines of a jumper presentation next week, assuming that Logan Morris does play again. I mean, they tend to do the right things like that. I mentioned earlier on, like, they don't tend to debut players as the sub. So I guess in that regard, he at least got to play probably, like, let's be honest, if in a perfect world, I assume it probably would have been one of Bruce Reville or him on a debut that might be the kind of player to get subbed out just to kind of keep him fresh and give him a bit of indulgence or whatever. But like,
well, they spent a good portion of the last quarter on the bench to finish the game. They were cooked.
Yeah. I mean, Bruce Reville was almost cooked after quarter time, but to have that level, I think in the first quarter I'm sitting there going, man, this guy is completely undroppable, and then he sort of didn't really feature in the remainder of the game. But his kicking and stuff like that was pretty impressive, and
kicking was great.
Sort of off one step, the sort of stand and deliver ones that sort of just like they dart and then drop just at the back of the pack were really cool. So I can see where you were at there with the kind of quote unquote similarities to Coleman. But yeah, I think like with games like that, and it's funny that a couple of weeks ago when we played North Melbourne, I brought up the game where we ended up with, I think, one on the bench or something like that.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
The second half was kind of a coming together, almost like moment for the group, where they won the second half. They still got towed by 50 points or whatever. But like, I think that game, like Ben Keys played quite a good game. He was doing like an on-the-ball job on someone. And just a few players, when you get shuffled, and it's sort of like, it goes back to us talking a little bit about the idea of, is the same versatility really versatility? And this is a like kind of actually showing what different players in different areas could do, plugging gaps. We almost had like a midfielder at every line just to kind of help with stoppage work and stuff like that. Like Jared Berry was playing out of the forward pocket at times or things like that just to sort of help out. And the team really came together, because I messaged you and I basically said, look, hopefully there's a bit of backs to the wall physically stuff going on, and they're just like, fuck this, I ain't losing to Gold Coast. Like, no chance.
Yeah.
And we really needed that, because I do think that they've been mentally pretty fragile this year.
Yeah, so, definitely. And that, that win, albeit it was certainly not the most impressive win, and it definitely could have been better with our goal kicking accuracy well under the microscope again. But, in terms of, that mental fortitude and resilience, it really went a long way in that aspect. So I think that was very pleasing to see. And, at the end of the day, we'll take a win because that really had the ability to end our season. And it must be said, Gold Coast were quite poor. Like this time, when we played them last year, and I said to you, I think that's the best game I've ever seen Gold Coast play when they towed us up at Metricon Stadium. This was, the exact opposite. That was probably one of their poorer games I've seen, especially this year. Rao, Miller, Anderson, they all were quiet wits. No bueno. Ben King didn't exactly towel Harris up the way he did last year, although he was on Jack Payne. And, I really didn't think Damien Hardwick was that stubborn that he was going to take nothing from the game last year. That, Neil's been blanketed the last 2 weeks. Took absolutely destroyed him last time. He didn't put him to him. He didn't put Ben King to Harris Andrews. The only thing that was sort of different this time around is they had Will Powell on Charlie, and he did a really good job on Charlie, because usually Charlie can get off the chain on the Suns. So he only managed to slime one goal in the last quarter. But yeah, I thought Damien Hardwick, especially with the injuries that we had, it was there for the taking for them, and yeah, they were quite poor. So luckily for us.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking, at quarter time or half time, like Hardwick surely could have gone the route of like, if we just stick with this, we'll be more or less in it. And like at the time, you're sort of looking at it going, well, if they chip away sort of 3 goals, win the last 2 quarters by 3 goals, they'll be well in it. But I'm a little bit more. I think that was a far better performance by us than it probably seemed. Like, to really be that comprehensively, all of the metrics.
Yes.
So I'm not doing a Chris Fagan here being like, look, actually, that said, I got to say, when the game started and we had our first 3 inside 50s and the first 2 went to 49 and 48 meters and came immediately out, I was like, yeah, well, are they really inside 50s?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just an aside. But yeah, I think the performance and the effort was kind of actually there. Like, there was an article that got released by the ABC, I don't know if you saw, where it sort of just said that basically the Lions were just struggling sort of with their inside 50 kick and then their goal kicking. And it used a lot of stats and metrics for a lot of the other elements of the game in terms of pressure acts and tackles inside forward 50 and work rate, stuff like that. And like, whilst, that's all well and good, it came on the back of particularly that second half against GWS, which I think the effort was actually lacking. Yes. So it was like, it wasn't reflective of what we had most recently seen, but it kind of was reflective of what we had been hearing from the coach and from people around the club, where like, we're doing all the things pretty much right. It's just, as the article said, the two most important kicks in footy weren't happening.
Yes.
And they arguably weren't really happening again.
Yeah. But there was definitely there was definitely better moments this week, especially compared to last week. And I really think, after the game against the Giants last week, and Dane Zorko came out and said they had 25 minutes worth of training throughout that week in between the Geelong game and the Giants game. To have a 10-day break, have two big sessions. I did hear word from, and once again, this is sort of third hand, but you know me, and I trust the guy that I hear this stuff from. He works quite closely with Noah Answorth, who has been doing some work down at Morningside, who said, there was something really different about this week in the group. Up until this week, I guess just the energy, the effort hasn't seemed to be there in amongst the group at training and stuff. But this week there was a really noticeable difference. So what that means, I don't know, but it clearly showed on the field. So more of that, please.
Yeah, look, I admit I kind of struggled with the idea of them doing 25 minutes between, albeit, what was it, a Saturday till a Thursday.
Yeah, a Saturday in the slogging rain. So
yeah, and I think, when you couple that with the fact that Lachie Neale said the week before, I didn't run very much. And, I mentioned that there was mitigating circumstances around that. It just doesn't come off particularly well because, not everyone's going to assume or understand that in a wet game like that, you're not running from stoppage to stoppage as quickly, or it's the ball's not zipping around or whatever. But, to hear that and then mix with the idea of, we only did 25 minutes of training, it's what are you doing? And unfortunately, I don't, necessarily buy into the idea that you do all of your fitness in preseason and then you do nothing for the remainder of the season. That seems insane to me. And you can still work on skills. You can still I don't know, maybe it's a cynical part of me that thinks that these players should be, I don't mean they should be training 9 to 5, but I kind of feel like they should more or less be at their job.
It's a tough one because obviously we're not sports scientists here, so we don't know the biomechanics and what's going to be best for optimum performance. But clearly, whatever happened in the week leading up to GWS did not lead to optimum performance. So yeah.
Well, it also the strategic element of it as well, and that's another thing that I'm definitely putting into the mix is sort of if you're not at the club, you're obviously not doing are they doing adequate review? You often hear we'll look at the tape on Monday or that sort of thing, and it's just how much time do they actually spend in quote unquote club land?
Yeah, it sounds like it's all about recovery. That seems to be the thing these days. And even after the game last night in the press conference, even Fague said, "Oh, look, there's going to be a lot of focus on massage and recovery this week." And it's well, good, I guess, because there's obviously going to be some sore bodies, some very sore bodies, but they're not going to be playing for the foreseeable future, so don't worry about getting them massaged and stuff. We need to keep this momentum rolling because we're going to go down to Adelaide against a team who's just had one of the great showdown victories, so they're going to be amped up, and we're going to need to try and back up our performance as well.
Just stick them in an ice bath and they'll be fine, No, I admit there's an element of not understanding kind of how the training regime and that sort of stuff works, but it strikes me as when you hear things coming from particularly other clubs as well, where, players aren't in at the club really all that often. They might be in for a meeting for a couple of hours on Monday morning or whatever, and then they're off. And it's just I don't know. I find it's exponential in terms of the amount of wages and stuff like that, because they should be there full time. And, the weekend should encompass that. But I don't know. Am I just a bitter fella? Possibly. But I just, you'd like to think that, and I think this is a point I was trying to make. It's when you're coming out saying things like that in interviews, it doesn't reflect well on people that might have an opinion or a mentality around it like I do, where it sort of abates that and says, oh, we are putting in the effort, because it doesn't seem like it. And then it appears tone deaf to use words and phrasings like that. Whereas you sort of want to hear them say, "Oh, we're doing everything we can."
Yeah.
And, that might be just lying or bullshit or whatever. But, like, to then be... It's like inviting questions that are going to be asked anyway and giving it kind of, like, evidence to be supportive of. But neither here nor there. I don't think our work rate was particularly in any way fallible last evening.
No, it was good.
Obviously we ran out of petrol tickets, as they say, by the fourth quarter. But, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, I did have a look this morning of the amount of players that played 100% of game time in the third and fourth quarters, and it was a very long list of players. So, they'll be absolutely spent after that. And, rightly so, but you get the 4 points after all of that. One of the great sort of character building wins. So very happy with that because, as I said, that this and Kingy put it on the bloody agenda that the Suns really had the opportunity to put the nail in our season's coffin right there and then. If Rao got off the chain, if XYZ happened, it really had the chance for us to be down and out. So, it was just good to have the energy of the debutantes there. I can't remember. Was it Kai? When Kai kicked the goal and Modi comes up and they did the big sort of, jumping chest bump and stuff. I was like, that's the sort of energy that has been lacking all year, and it's the sort of stuff that those young kids bring, and it's definitely the stuff we need. So it puts a smile on the faces of Harris Andrews and stuff where they see that Modi coming all the way from halfback to do a big jumping chest bump with Kai Loman. That's the sort of stuff we've been lacking.
Well, there was one moment as well where I think Kai Loman, he might have missed a set shot and went out for a behind, and then the kick in came and he spoiled it and he was up and about. And one lady particularly on the veranda loved that one. So if you get a chance to watch that back, there's out of her seat wearing a stripy top, just giving the double like fists going crazy, and it's like I had to replay that. It was so funny. But yeah, like plenty of stuff like that. I think Kai Loman's brought a lot of energy to the team, and he was absolutely everywhere at times last night. There were definitely moments where you sort of had, big moments in the game, and you're like, dudes, don't run from fullback all the way to the forward 50 to like go and cheer this dude. Just conserve your sprint energy. Similarly, there was one moment where Cam Rayner, who I think was pretty abject, his cleanliness is gone in terms of his disposal. And I said to you off air, even when he was doing things that weren't quite right, he always looked like they were the things that he was trying to do. Whereas now it just seems like he's fumbly, he's not disposing of the ball, it's coming off the side of his foot. It's almost like his handball is with a pitching wedge, but whatever. He did his kick into the open forward 50, missed all of his targets and made Hipwood do like an 80-meter sprint to try and get the ball back. And it was like, in a game like this, you do not want to be having your like full forward have to sprint an extra 80 meters to put pressure on here and put pressure on back the other way. Because it makes him look like a dickhead because people will see that he didn't take a mark or something, but they don't see the like 203 centimeter pressure gauge coming at it both sides. So Cam Rayner needs to lift. Same with Charlie Cameron. I understand that he had a man to him, but like,
he's his year has been very well below the standard that Charlie set for himself. I tell you what,
it's becoming a little bit familiar, the idea of him having a guy blanketing him.
Yeah. I tell you what was a really good thing to see, and it was quite funny. I was chatting to the people next to me. Joey missed his first set shot, which was 30 meters out, straight in front. He hit the very top of the post, and then the rundown tackle to get his second shot at goal. That is as pleasing as anything you can hope for from a bloke who's been under fire from his second efforts and follow-ups and stuff like that. Rightly so, but last week, he wasn't alone there, as we spoke about. A lot of people, their second efforts, hunger, pressure, all that sort of stuff dropped away significantly. But to see him do that rundown tackle and then slot a bullshit goal on the juncture of the 50 and the boundary line, that was just so Joe.
Yeah. I mean, there's not really too much to say about him. He popped up at both ends at various times, but a lot of people look at his output and say that it wasn't there. But I mean, unfortunately, in real time, we didn't get to see the first 3 quarters of that goal because they were showing a replay of something else. And then, you're sort of like, what the hell's going on here? So might have to check the tape on that one.
No, it was really good, really, really pleasing.
But Sharpie obviously came in, and he's someone who I quite enjoy.
Yes.
I like the element of his, like, I spoke a couple of weeks ago about Lachie Neale's kicking, kind of the action not quite matching the output in terms of there's not a visceral tangibility to it. I feel like with Sharpie, his running and his effort and his, like, everything kind of, it has payoff for the amount of action that goes into it, and it's really fun to watch. It's sort of like he runs in and he goes hard, and beautiful check side goals.
Oh, that was in the air forever.
Yeah, he took one from Darcy Wilmot, I guess, but I thought he was good, and I think with all of the players that came in, like I know it sounds dumb, but I don't think any of them will come out of the team. But I also think if they were in there by whatever merit, I don't think they would come out of the team anyway, because they all impacted.
Yeah.
Bruce Reville obviously struggled in the latter stages of the game, but in the first quarter he was fantastic. You're sort of sitting there going like, this guy is the missing link. Just in terms of like what we need in terms of ball movement and just excitement and stuff like that. Sharpie was really good. Logan Morris, for having played 8 quarters of football, like, you can imagine that he'd probably score 2 more goals with those set shots. And his, work at ground level and stuff was all really good. Cool head. I think I noticed his set shots, he seems to get quite close to the man on the mark. And that's why I think he got unstuck with the 2 misses that he had. So maybe something to work on. But yeah, I mean, they mentioned we'd had like probably the best injury run for the past 5 seasons. So there hadn't been the necessity to kind of blood the young, as they say. But it's well and truly here now.
Yeah.
And also find me another club ever that's had 5 ACLs concurrently. So
It's grim, hey?
it's ridiculous.
Thankfully, and we spoke about this on the podcast last week, he will be back this year. Timeline's still sort of TBC, but it's definitely not going to be, it won't be before the bye, and I doubt it'll be like the week after the bye either. I think we're looking at sort of closer to round 15, round 16, and they're being cautious, and rightly so, because we cannot afford any more injuries at this point. It's crazy. We have had a really good stretch with injuries over the last 5 years, but all our chickens coming home to roost in 2024, so... It's
coming home to roost in our knee tendons.
Yeah. So the rehab group's going to be quite, popular.
At least it'll be fun.
Yeah, sure.
Like, better than you hear of that, like, one Burke that's got an ACL and they're like, yeah, recovery was really hard because I was just by myself forever. And now you're like, well, I hope you like Darcy Gardner. Hope he has good chat. Like, because, yeah, that's whatever.
All right. Well, that all being said, 4 points in the bag. Let's have a look at some votes for Hop On Brewery Tours. hoponbrewerytours.com.au. Book yourself a half or a full day tour right meow. Great stuff to do for, Bucks parties, or if you've got like a little team building thing, then a Hop On Brewery Tour is the way to go. Who have you got in your votes this week?
So I've got Jared Berry with 1 vote.
Sure.
He's just picking them up, accruing them like interest. And then I've gone 2 for Dane Zorko and 3 for Josh Dunkley.
Yeah, fair call. Yeah, it was all the midfield for me this week, so I'm going to go 1 Neale, 2 Dunkley, 3 Zorko.
Very nice.
Yeah. Well, having said that,
unfortunately, Zorko got burned on a couple of kicks late in the game. Otherwise, he would have equaled the highest number of kicks in a football game this millennia.
Sure. Wow.
Which is also a century, but it doesn't really. It's kind of going towards the year 3000, which... wonder what footy's going to look like then, as they say. But yeah, so he had 35 kicks, and 36 is the most that's happened in this century.
Wow.
And Lynchy mentioned it to him, and Zorko was a bit ticked off in the end. How to bring a guy down.
It is ultimate shithousery. Dane Zorko winning the Marcus Ashcroft medal. Like that's. Well,
I didn't get to see it because they just were like, "Oh, that's the end of the game. Here's." Bounce, and I love Dunstall, but I hate the bounce.
Yeah, so. I mean, just quickly, anyone that is listening and that genuinely watches Bounce every week, why? Get in touch, because I'd love to know how that show is still going, because it is, it's not for me. Let's put it that way.
No, well, the frustrating thing is, I think, between Cam Mooney, Ben Dixon, and Dunstall. Not Andrew Gaze, because that's just like your weird uncle doing strange shit. But like the 3 of those, I think, could have what I think On the Couch should be. Not Cam Mooney, because what even is that guy? But if I just had Dunstall and Ben Dixon talking, I could watch that forever, because those 2 are like actually good football people. And I've said it before that whenever Ben Dixon is on the couch instead of Gary Lyons, it is a far better show. Is it just the ghost of Spud that's keeping that show alive? Quite possibly, but
Yeah. At least they got rid of best on ground. At least they had the foresight to do that. Put it that way.
I didn't mind Best on Ground.
Oh,
It
come
had
on,
a
man.
theme song.
It had a theme song. The old Russell Robertson theme song.
Look, that would not have worked given that Rue was MIA for the whole of last year. So he
That's
was.
true. He's still missing. He's still over
necessary.
there. I doubt that he's coming back. He's living that American dream now. Neither here nor there. All right, well, no time for questions
Your
this
votes.
week.
Oh, no, you already did your votes. Sorry.
Yeah,
I just forgot them because.
Yeah, because they were sort of nonchalant. They're just sort of stock standard midfield votes. No time for questions this week because the game was last night. We're recording this early Monday morning.
Good strategy, boy. Good strategy. And again.
So for crisp communications, let's have a look at the team changes that are going to happen for next week. crispcoms.co. Get yourself a free Brisbane Lions fan car sticker. Better yet, get yourself one of the best marketing teams in Queensland with Crisp Communications. Well, there's obviously going to have to be some changes. Linc's going to come out. Darcy's going to come out, as is Noah Answorth for at least the week. Probably Starcevic as well. I mean, let's just run on the assumption that Starce will be out for next week. So, what changes are you making? There's 3 or 4.
I'm trying to figure this out because it's like Monday morning. My brain doesn't really work, so I shouldn't say that. But because the idea of like one coming out before the game started and then the sub becoming not the sub, I'm kind of like, how many players need to come out? So we've got Diz, Linc, Noah, and Starcevic are all assumedly not going to be in the team.
Yes.
Right? All right. So Lomo, my mate Jackson Pryor.
Yep.
And then it's like, well, who else have we got here? So Pryor probably comes in for Noah, Diz, Logan Morris. And then it's like, okay, if Cal Archie comes back, will he come in and plug a hole? He can do it either forward or back. Come on, VFL. What do you got? That's you, I mean.
What did the VFL have? Not bloody much. They got absolutely spanked. So, yeah, I would agree with all that. I say Archie comes straight back in if he's fit. They did say it was only going to be a week, so Archie will come back in. I think everyone...
Tunstile?
Yeah, I think Tunstall will probably come back in as the sub. Yeah, probably that. God, we're really testing our versatility and depth here. It's
good.
hard. Yeah, well, is it? Jackson Pryor comes in as well. So there's 3, and then we need a sub. You know, I hate to say it. it. I think Jared Lyons is going to be the sub next week.
I think you forgot Logan Morris as well.
Yeah, but I'm sort of keeping him in. I'm keeping Sharp, Reville, and Logan Morris all in. So it's, yeah.
So you've got Cal Archie, Jackson Pryor, and JL over Tunstall.
No, I think Tunstall will come in, but I think, is there still a spot to fill, or is that it?
That's it.
Okay, well
Thank Christ.
Well, then you go. I think Tunstall will be your sub, and then JL will be fighting a lone fight in the VFL.
Yeah, well, I just can't. I can't with him.
I know you can't. Yeah,
Put it this way: when Bruce Reville came on, I was sort of like, "Why the hell has JL been our sub ever?" When this guy's been, I mean, obviously it wasn't here last year, but like seeing this guy run around with intensity, it's like, man, put that guy as a sub. He's only good for 1 quarter, but man, what a quarter!
Yeah. Well, while we're staying on the 2s here, they got towed up big time by the Suns, 71 to 157. That's a big score that's been put on by the Suns. Jai Farah 5 goals for them, Sanday 4, and it was sort of not our AFL listed players in the VFL that sort of affected the scoreboard for us. Ben Thomas, Jamison Shea. Logan Morris kicked a goal, as did Jared Lyons, but like Jake Lohman, Ewan McPherson, Kalen Lane kicked a goal as well. But yeah, not much to take away from that performance, especially...
Well, I think when you're looking at it and going like the knock-on effect of injuries from the one, and I know that that's kind of not, you know, the ones that happened in the game probably weren't affecting of the other one, but like, you know, if you look at our injury list in the whole, it's what, like Ashcroft, Duday, Bailey, Archie, Starcevic. Before the game, it's like you're just sort of leeching from one to robbing Peter to pay Paul. So,
and you're missing, they're missing sort of Dev Robb, Carter Michael, and James Madden as well. So they're all, I mean, aside from Carter Michael, who can never seem to get on the pitch, but they're all, you know, high quality 2s players.
Yeah, so I think they're just a bit struggling at the moment. It's probably, you know, the old Gold Coast Academy probably rubbing their hands together pretty well, aren't they?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, there's, I guess, a few little changes there that we've got that we can lean on for a game against Adelaide next week, who had, like I said before, one of the great showdown wins, one of the few tips I managed to actually get right this week, so good on them. But we're going to need to be at our absolute best when we take on the Crows this week, that's for sure.
How did you manage to cook your tips so bad?
Oh, I mean, I tipped Geelong. I had tipped Collingwood up until the very last moment where I swapped to Carlton before the game. I certainly didn't pick Hawthorn to beat the Dogs. I would have got maybe 4 or 5.
Maybe we need to do tipping next year so that I can put my shit mouth where it or whatever. Because
there was a few upsets. Put it that way. There was a few upsets.
Yeah.
And Essendon only just got over the line against West Coast.
Do you know what really annoyed me? Seeing GWS be absolutely shit against Sydney.
Yeah.
And being like, these guys were utterly untouchable last week. It was like their kicking game was perfect, and when it wasn't perfect, their running game was there. And just to see them, when the rain came down, you're sitting there going, oh, Sydney are like a Slick Magoo kicking team. Their strategy will struggle here. Nah, GWS didn't adapt. Same as us against Geelong. Just didn't adapt. And they were pretty poor.
Yeah. Cool, huh?
Pretty poor. It's amazing just to see that just about every team has played really well against us, except for Melbourne and North Melbourne, but whatever. Feel bad for Callum Brown. He's possibly the nicest guy in footy.
Yeah.
And to see him really the brace thing, it's like he's just like, shit, there's a dude there.
Yeah.
Trying to make himself small. I think he was trying to make himself small, not bracing.
Yeah,
because he made a 50 meter sprint to make an effort, and it's just like, all right, man.
Yeah, we'll wait, but I would say that GWS will probably try and get that at least downgraded. 3 weeks seems a bit stiff, so we'll wait to see what happens there. Adelaide, they're in a very similar position to us this year in the fact that they came in with a bit of hype and excitement around them with the way they finished off their season last year and only just missing out on finals. It's safe to say they've underperformed, probably not to the level that we have, but managed to get their shit together for a good showdown victory, albeit against Port Adelaide, who kicked even worse than us. So we know what happened last year when we played them. We had a very similar third quarter that we did last night. Last night it was 0-9. What did we kick against them in the third quarter last year, where we kept getting an inside 50 but could not put it on the scoreboard? I think it was like 1-8 or something.
1-7 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they obviously ended up with a win before we went off into the bye, and it was a pretty decent sort of win. We sort of never really... They just kept us at arm's length the whole game, and we had our chances but just couldn't capitalise. So, they're very good at Adelaide Oval, so we'll need to bring our absolute best with a ragtag team that we're going to sort of...
1-9.
Yeah, there you go. Bundle together this week, so... It's going to be a tough game. Crows are up and about at the moment. They'll take a lot of confidence from the win last week. So, and a shout out to Rory Sloane, one of the best guys in footy. And as he said, as he retired, he's like, he just wanted to play footy in the way he believed it should be played. And I think he absolutely did that. Yeah, just a genuine footballer, and great to watch him. Sad to see him go.
Yeah, good career. How many? 200 plus games?
Yeah, I think around about the 250-ish mark.
Bit of an ever-present. Yeah, good stuff. I think, that said, the Adelaide will probably look at our win and go, oh, shit, they backs to the walls there. So there might be an element of, they're being wary of us. We're probably should be being wary of them. But, yeah, I think it should be good, hopefully. Hopefully bring back the free scoring nature of it all.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And you know what? As long as we can actually do some free scoring and kick more goals than behinds, that'd be a handy. Or at least even out that 10-19 to a sort of 14-15, or that would be largely more acceptable. Yeah, 10-19, not great, especially 0-9 in the third quarter. It's just, it does suck the life out of you a little bit, doesn't it? In terms of memorable games between the Lions and the Crows, I got a couple that spring to mind. Is there one that jumps out at you?
No.
Okay.
Forgot about this. But if you waffle on, I might try and think of something.
All right. Well, I will take you back to potentially the darkest days for the Lions, who was our coach? Justin Lepage. Was it must have been 2016, because Fagan came in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the infamous game, the game that was the that's it for Justin Lepage, where we got absolutely done by 138 points by Adelaide. And I do remember when Lepage came in to take over the team, he was introducing this like horseshoe-style game plan. And one of the things he said is, especially early on, it should limit the amount of times we get absolutely walloped. So it should keep us competitive for longer, even if we don't win the games. And then it turns out it didn't stop that at all, because we got absolutely done in by Adelaide. And that was the end for Justin Lepage.
138 points. Reece Matheson kicked 2 goals.
Yeah.
Good on him. And Tom Rockcliffe managed to accrue 30 plus. The less said about that, the better. Obviously, different forms of life at that point in time, I feel. We had such classics playing in that team as Matt Hamilman. Was there. Josh Shackey. It's kind of funny, though, because this team, it's really funny if you look at it and you just go like, all of them. The team that played is more or less kind of the foundation of what ended up happening with the beginning, obviously, the following year. But just like, there's a lot of guys there that you're like, oh yeah, they ended up being quite a lot better players once Fagan came in, which I find kind of... Your mate Josh Green was there. Jordan Dawson was playing. Oh, that's a different Dawson. L. Dawson. Who the hell's L. Dawson? Liam Dawson.
Oh, Liam Dawson, yeah. Went on to... I think he went back and started playing for Aspley, Liam Dawson. Probably one of the better players for... Or maybe it was Redcliffe Bombers. Either or. Either way, the other game I was going to mention was the 2003 final against the Crows. And this was... this actually popped up, I think in the... Maybe not last off-season, but the off-season before that, of just like random classic finals matches. And it was us versus Adelaide at the Gabba. And Wayne Carey was playing for Adelaide.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But we had some great names rolling around there. It was 2003, so I think the only Richard Hadley was playing in this particular game. Other than that, it was the basic makings of the premiership team that year. Lapp and Bradshaw.
That would have been what, after we'd been beaten by Collingwood in the first qualifying final. It would have been the elimination final, right?
Yes.
Goodness me. Wayne Carey playing for the Crows. How about that?
Yeah, what a weird timeline that was.
It was kind of a bit of theatre. Obviously not good given what's going on at the moment, but strange fella. Yeah, I honestly can't think of really any kind of interesting games between the two of us. In 2019, I want to say, I think we won by a point, but they might have kicked a goal after the siren. I think I remember that game more for anything because Eddie Betts was on the ground and kind of like on his back with the ball in hand and went to do one of those ones where he like just jams it on the boot.
Oh, yeah.
But he just missed his foot and pegged the ball about 40 metres and didn't get done for throwing, and they kicked a goal, and I was absolutely livid. So that kind of shows where my mind's at. That's what I'm thinking about in terms of Eddie Betts throwing the ball 40 metres. So cool. Glad we won that game.
Yeah, very similar last year as well. We played Adelaide twice last year, obviously, the one we spoke about before, and then they came up here, and it was in that run of games shortly after the Melbourne game where we failed to close that game down. Then I think we had Geelong the week after, then Freo, and then Adelaide perhaps. There was a Saints game thrown in there. There was just sort of like 4 or 5 games where after the Melbourne game, we were tested consistently and immediately on how to close down games. And all these teams were sort of like coming at us in the back end of the game, and we managed to walk away with it. Would have been under a goal as well against those guys. So
fun times for watching footy, I suppose. Just keeping that heart rate up.
Yes.
Do we want to go into mad conspiracy theory time?
Oh, we can go into mad conspiracy theory time because I know you've been waiting to address something on the podcast for the last few weeks, but you said, you're going to save it for a win. Well, here is your time.
So I think it kind of came up when Harry Mackay kicked a snap from like basically the goal square as a set shot. And I was sort of like, they got to do something about this. Got to do something about it because that's insane. And hear me out here. But what if they were to put not like a solid white line, but like a different coloured grass, like a dark green line that went from, bear with me here, the right goalpost goes from there. That kind of dark green line goes from that goalpost to the opposite 50-metre arc where it intersects the boundary line. And in that side of the line, you can kick a snap. On the other side of the line, you have to kick a drop punt. And you have one obviously going from the other side. So you have these 2 snap zones to clear that up. sort the boys from the men. I think it's brilliant.
Yes. I understand what you're saying. There's designated here's where you can kick a snap and snap only. I think once you start dictating how players can and can't kick the ball, I think people have got enough problems with the game as it is already. But I like it.
I've just sent you the picture that I drew up that I sent you like 7 weeks ago. I think it works well because it just means that like there's so much weird stuff that happens, and like we'll get onto umpires and their lack of awareness and situational awareness and game sense and stuff. But like, the idea that you can't be a teammate within like 15 meters of the guy kicking the goal is sort of like, why? Because you need to protect the protected zone from the snap. It's like, whatever. Just have it. That line, you can go there. If you're on the other side of it, you can kick a snap. Whatever. I think it clears that up. It stops people like Harry Mackay kicking snaps from the goal square. I mean, they changed the rule for when you take a mark inside the square not too long ago. So... And I think it would be funny, and it would create really weird situations where deep pockets would have longer snap zones. They've now become the snap zone.
Yeah.
So there's that. Second thing, you know how there's all these dumb goal reviews?
Yes.
My brother put it in my ear that do we not think that maybe crypto.com has a bit of clout?
Oh.
And to say you have a mandatory number of goal reviews around.
Right.
For our sponsorship. And I'm like, that's insane enough to be true.
You know what? There is probably more merit to that than the snap zones for sure. Because obviously whenever that contract was done up for, hey, you can sponsor the goal review, we promise we'll review it X amount of times per round or something like, or 3 times a game or something like that. I don't know that we had any last night.
We didn't have any last night, but maybe they'd already fulfilled their
They've reached the quota
for the round. So, and then the other thing that I've got, so I mentioned this because for a while that like umpire dude was like posting questions on Reddit and was like, post me your questions. And then he's since disappeared.
Yeah.
So cool. And I was wondering, because I think it might have been on Gather Round, just watching goal umpires and watching them do utterly the wrong movements at the wrong times, contrary to what you expect from footballers. So, the expression right over the goal umpire's hat indicates the goal umpire is not moved because the ball has sailed over his head. But the amount of times when the ball's going through half post, particularly on gather round, and I don't know what was going on there, and I've noticed it since, but I've also noticed it the other way around, and in my opinion, the right way. Like the ball's going through half post height and they're going like parallel to the goal to check if it's like touched on the line. It's like, what are you doing? And then they'll goal review it because they can't tell which side of the post it's gone on. It's like, you're supposed to back up and like see, oh, yep, it's gone there. Or if you're like, this is marginal, I'll go on the side of the post. But it interferes with like people trying to mark the ball and stuff like that. It's insane. And then the thing is that like, it's arguably easier to see a touched one on the line than it is to see which side of the post sometimes the ball's gone on with the weird, terrible camera angles from the 1940s. And then you couple with that in this round alone, I've seen umpires back into and get smashed by 2 players.
Yeah.
And like, you know, and then you have the Charlie Cameron one where he like had obviously hurt his ankle and he's being told to go back on the mark and stand. I've had like, there's been boundary umpires that have like just like run into players and stuff. And it's like, do they not watch the game? Like, do they not understand how the game works?
What I'm noticing at the moment is the stand rule is, I don't know that it's being phased out, but it's not being as heavily policed as it was when it was first introduced. Like, a lot of players on the mark immediately just start moving backwards and not getting called for not standing. So I've been keeping an eye on that. Like, the stand rule just doesn't seem to be as heavily enforced as it once was, and I don't hear umpires call stand as much either.
Well, it seems weird because a lot of teams, particularly in the like forward half, they tend to be, when there's a opposition mark taken, they tend to back off the mark, the 5 meters, you know, and then that way they're not actually behest to stand. But if the player who marked the ball moves forward 1 meter, it's then play on. So it's like the onus then becomes on the player who took the mark to find their own line and go back and make sure they don't. I mean, the thing for me is players that mark the ball, and when they do enforce the stand rule, when they take, you know, quite a few steps, particularly if they're on a wing, and it's like, can you maybe not call play on because he's taken 4 steps in field, and you've got like the dude on the wing in field 10 meters and then the guy on the mark like 3 meters closer to the boundary, and the physics of a line don't make sense,
Yeah.
or the maths of a line, because it's not actually a segment at all. Tackling the heart of issues here of trigonometry.
That's it. Conspiracy theories are us.
I love that the most viable conspiracy theory was the one with the crypto.
Well, yeah. I mean, money's involved, of
It's
course.
all in a name, though. Like, I'm talking about the name. Crypto conspiracies.
I like it. It's a good way to finish things off for this week. Another big game against the Crows coming up. So, yeah, let's...
I'm telling you, snap zones could be a thing. They should be a thing. That'd be great. Because you'd know what to expect.
Yeah, maybe one day. And then we can introduce bloody, like, barrel zones as well. Maybe, like, 60 to 70 metres out from goal. Barrels only.
I mean, well, they should be, right? Like, the Malcolm Blight rule of, like, get everyone to do one at the end of training once. Oh, no, AFLPA says we can't do that at this time. We're in the red zone. Sorry.
All right. Well, that's been another episode of the Brisbane Lions Fancast. Good to get a win, especially at the Gabba, because it has been quite a while. So,
Hot minute for you, hey?
yeah, let's keep it going. Let's beat the Crows. Let's keep that rolling. We got Tigers,
Hey.
Hawthorn, Saints, Bulldogs all coming in the next few weeks as well. So, on paper, winnable matches. But if we keep losing players to blown out knees, then who the hell knows what's going to happen.